Good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Michael Patmos, and it is March the 20th, 2026, and I have a very important video for you today. For those of you who follow my Substack, you know that on Monday, the federal court in Massachusetts issued a ruling that really rocked the whole medical world. That ruling found that the recently promulgated recommendations from the Center for Disease Control Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices and the Department of Health and Human Services were set aside or stayed. Basically, the court said those findings, those guidelines and recommendations were not derived from science, were not consistent with the scientific mainstream, and more importantly, they were developed and arrived at illegally. And even more important than that, the court said that the ACIP committee was impaneled and configured illegally in disregard to federal rules as to how these people can be placed on such a committee and what the criteria are. Specifically, the court said that the ACIP is, quote, distinctly unqualified. And he's on end quote, and he also singled out each member of the committee, including the vice chair, Dr. Robert Malone, who the court said, quote, lacks qualifications and experience. Well, that's a pretty big thing for the court to say, given the fact that Dr. Malone is the vice chair of this powerful committee and has been, in many would argue, the most powerful and influential voice in the anti mRNA vaccine movement around the world. Dr. Malone is considered the authority. He promotes himself as, quote, the world's most knowledgeable person on mRNA vaccines, end quote. As you should know, he claims he invented the vaccine and or the technology behind it. And he has promoted himself this way, and he's been held out to be an expert at this level by many in the media, including Fox News and the Trump administration and many others. So Malone is arguably the most powerful individual in the world when it comes to shaping public opinion about mRNA vaccination. And for the court to rule that he is distinctly unqualified and lacks qualifications and experience really was an earthquake. It does not come as a surprise to me because I've been arguing this for 5 years, having lived with his CV on my desktop for the last 5 years, having read that CV line by line, word by word, 100 times, and fact checking every line of it. I am not surprised by the court's uh, assessment. I agree with it. Uh, well, I can tell you Dr. Malone doesn't agree with it, and he has, as one would expect from him, issued a blistering and scathing attack on the judge personally, and um, hinted that he might sue the judge for defamation. I don't think he knows about immunity for judges, and that he challenged and showed where all of the judge's findings are incorrect. Now, I put below a link to a Substack I did earlier this week about this, as well as links to two Substacks that Dr. Malone posted on his Substack and excerpted his comments specifically about his credentials to show you and to analyze those to see and ask the question. You know, he's responding that the court said I'm not an expert. Well, here's proof. Well, I asked the question, is this proof legit? And I turned to ChatGPT for some help with this, and then fact checked those conclusions to make sure that they are correct, and I believe that what I'm about to present to you is indeed factually correct. So, um, what Dr. Malone now this also foreshadows, I believe, what the appeal to this court ruling will be. Clearly, Robert Kennedy, the defendants, Robert Kennedy, Jay Bhattacharya, and Marty Makary, are going to appeal this ruling. It completely blocked their entire anti-vax agenda. So they will clearly appeal it. It'll go to the appeals court. If it is, if the ruling is upheld, then I am quite sure they will try to take it to the Supreme Court. But what Malone did in his response, which you'll see below, is I think, first of all, it reads like it was written by his lawyer, even refers to him in the third person. So I think it was actually a response written by by the lawyers. I don't think he wrote all of it himself. But what it does is it foreshadows the argument that will be made in the appeals court when they go back in and say, hey, wait a second, you said Malone is not qualified. Here are his incredible qualifications. So I thought I would take a look at those qualifications and see what if they're true or not. And if you read below, you will see what I came up with. And it is typical of the pattern. Having studied Dr. Malone's CV now for 5 years, I can tell you there's a real distinct pattern to his CV. There's a kernel of truth. Some of what he says about his accomplishments are true. He does have a bachelor's degree in biochemistry, a master's degree in biology. He does have an MD degree. And he did 1 year of internship. He did not complete a residency. He's not board certified or board eligible. He's not a pathologist, but he does have certain credentials. So, upon this basis of certain truthful credentials, he then layers on some exaggeration and embellishment, enhancing these credentials to make and qualifications to make them sound more formidable. For example, when he was a research, he had, as I mentioned, he did 1 year of pathology internship and 1 year of a research fellowship at UC Davis called the Giannini Fellowship, and he takes that and refers to it as a somehow more than what it actually was, and that he claims he was appointed to the faculty at UC Davis as an assistant professor. No, he was an adjunct faculty member when he was working in the lab after completing 1 year of internship. He embellishes it by saying he was appointed to as the founder and director of the gene therapy program at UC Davis in 1993. There was no gene therapy program at UC Davis in 1993, at least none that was formally announced, was not mentioned in any UC Davis documentation and in the local media. In fact, UC Davis on the gene therapy program website says the program was started in 2007 by Dr. Jan Nolta. So what Dr. Malone does is he takes this core element of truth, embellishes it significantly, and then even fabricates some of the claims as well. And this is exactly what he's done before, and he does it again in his 2 articles responding to the court. He lists these various accomplishments and roles that he played with Zika virus and Ebola. And although there is some documentation that he participated in some of this work, a lot of what he says, there is no corroboration for some of his claims outside of his CV. The only evidence that I can find of some of his claims are come from his own CV. There's no objective third party outside corroboration of some of these claims. And there's also some clear-cut misrepresentation and fabrication. For example, he refers to his participation in the Global Clinical Scholars Training Program at Harvard. He says he graduated in the top 5% of his class. Well, that's Incorrect. First of all, you don't graduate from the Global Clinical Scholars Training Program. It's not a degree granting program. It's a certificate program for professional education, like a continuing education course or going to Harvard to get a certificate in management or some other graduate certificate. It's not a graduate degree. So you don't graduate from the program, you complete the program. And finally, um, Harvard doesn't rank those who complete these programs. So when he says he graduated in the top 5% of his class, that's not exactly true. I have actually communicated with Harvard about this and gotten confirmation that those are misrepresentations. So, uh, the battle continues, the fight goes on. Uh, Health and Human Services will appeal this. I hope the ruling withstands the appeal. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm told by good lawyers that it is a well written and well founded decision, and will likely has a 75% chance that it will be upheld on appeal, which means that HHS will then try to take it to the United States Supreme Court. But what's interesting about this is that what we're seeing play out now is Malone's CV being litigated, Malone's CV being dissected and litigated in the court of law. And I think it is very important that elements of a CV that are embellished or exaggerated, whether or not that rises to a certain level is really a matter of interpretation. But if there's something in that CV that is fabricated, that's a whole nother matter. And I welcome the careful and clinical examination of this CV in a court of law, and we'll see where it goes and what happens to Dr. Malone's CV.